Bono Sanbonani, hello, how's the shalom? I'm your favorite fat boy, Big Daddy Liberty. And of course, I'm in a different location. You can probably see from my very inspired background that I'm not necessarily in my studio. I'm at the offices of the South African Zionist Federation. These are guys who you guys know, your favorite fat boy being a Zionist himself, are friends of mine. Excuse the pun, because I'm also in the offices of the South African Friends of Israel. That's another organization for another day. Shout out Stuart. Excuse me, not Stuart. Stuart's at...
Gavi.
Yeah, that's Gavi, that's right. That's what I'm looking for. Guys, welcome to another episode of the Big Liberty Show. I have a very special guest, someone who, hey man, I can call him a brother in arms insofar as our advocacy and our love for the state of Israel. But let me not waffle on and on and on. Let me actually introduce my guest. His name is Rowan Polivan. He's from the South African Zionist Federation. Rowan, welcome to the show, homie. How are you doing?
Thanks, Big Daddy. Really good to be here. I'm really good. Thank you.
Awesome, homie. Let's jump straight into it. We're going to be discussing all things Israel today, and with a specific focus on the deal of the century announced by President Trump. Now, those who know me and who listen to my other shows on syndicated platforms know that I've been waxing lyrical about this deal because of the importance of not only Israel, but finally giving the Palestinian people an opportunity to get their act in order, which is very important if there is to be any peace deal. But let's take 3 steps back and look at Israel itself. Rowan, anybody who claims to understand the Middle East and the conflict in that part of the world cannot then therefore say that Israel somehow is the apartheid state, as we often hear the Boycott, Divest and Sanction Organization, BDS for short, douchebags in my preferred descriptor, who can't then claim to believe that line that says Israel is the apartheid state or the aggressor or whatever the case may be. Israel, since its founding, has fought, 5 wars, defensive wars, against nations who've outwardly stated they want to annihilate Israel. Rowan, that was a very long intro, but the point I'm trying to ask here is, Israel itself, why is it important for there to be peace in that part of the world for Israelis and Palestinians?
Well, first of all, Big Daddy, Israel is based on the fundamental belief and right of Jews to live in freedom and self-determination in their ancient homeland.
Absolutely.
And that is really the fundamental right of Jews, and that is really the essence of Zionism. So Jews who wish to live in Israel and wish to have sovereignty in their land has, for some reason in the Middle East, that has been a controversial topic. It's actually been a controversial topic around the world because for so many years, for thousands of years, Jews have not had that freedom. They've not had that right. They've yearned to return back to their homeland, but for all kinds of reasons we can go into, they haven't been able to. So now, since 1948, since the rebirth of Israel as the Jewish state, Jews have now exercised this right. And all the wars against Israel and the attempts to annihilate Israel, and this continues, unfortunately, to this day,
right,
is really based on the fundamental belief that Jews do not have such a right, and the failure of much of the world, much of the Arab world and beyond, the failure to basically accept Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. And even the idea of peace, and we can go into that in a lot more detail, is based on that rejection of that fundamental right.
Absolutely. Rowan, you've opened up all the talking areas that I wanted to get into. Let's go through them meticulously before we get to the actual deal itself. Rowan, we were in Israel a while back, last year, end of the year or so, and it was an eye-opener for me. First time there, as someone who's converting into the Jewish faith, I got to see all the landmarks that I read about in Torah, and and even if one were a Christian, you literally go there and see all the landmarks, if you will, that define your faith. Why is it important? I'm speaking now from a soon-to-be Jew to a Jew. Why is it important for the control of Israel and all these religious land sites that I speak of to be in the hands of Israel? Is there a difference between how the Israelis have treated these historical sites and perhaps any other grouping that's lived in that part of the world, or even that region, period?
Well, it's a very good question, Big Daddy. So basically, I can give you a very specific time period when the old city, the very bedrock of much of Judaism, the old city in the historical city of Jerusalem, was not under Israeli control. And this was between 1948 and 1967, when basically Jews were not able to freely go and pray in their the holiest of areas, the Kotel, the Western Wall, their place. They were literally not allowed. The Jordanians at that point controlled the area, and Jews were not allowed. The Jewish holy sites, some of the the critical synagogues and other places were destroyed. They were literally destroyed and trampled on. Now, since Israel regained control and reunited Jerusalem in 1967, I think this speaks to the fundamental aspect of Israel as a Jewish state.
Absolutely.
Those religious sites, whether they sites for Jews, Christians, or Muslims, are now fully protected, open to anyone wishing to pray at their holy place. So that speaks to the difference. When it was not under control of Israel, there was destruction. Now that it's under control of Israel, it's free, there's democratic values, and there's freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and freedom of association.
And Rowan, you're spot on insofar as the latter bit also, insofar as saying it's the freedoms. And on this show, you guys know where I'm going with this one. I hold freedom as a fundamental political value. And when you have the state of Israel, and I'm going to get to bursting a certain myth just now, it accords its citizens equal rights, and essentially, in this particular instance, going back to religion, opens the doors, if you will, to all religions to come and pray at their holy sites. In addition, because when we were there, we went into some of those archaeological sites. It's doing a lot of work to even, dig up, since it is archaeology, sites that aren't even Jewish in some cases, other old religions and old societies. But I wanted to come back to the where you ended off, the state of Israel. And I want to play a BDS type douchebag, a BDS type loser. I'm just kidding. I'm going to play a BDS type character now, and I want you to respond to these common tropes that are thrown at us. Well, yeah, Rowan, of course you'd say that you're a Jew and you're a Zionist, but in reality, Israel is an apartheid state, and it segregates people, and much like apartheid, it creates little Bantustans for the people of color over there, because Jews are white. And the people of color don't enjoy the same rights as Israeli citizens as white Israeli citizens do. How am I wrong, Rowan?
In multiple different areas and wrong. First of all, it's a complete myth to say that most of Israelis are white. In fact, most of Israelis are not white. And if you go to Israel, and anyone who's been to Israel will attest to that fact, there are Jews coming from all over the world. There's Jews who are coming from North Africa and from the Arab worlds. There's Arabs, there's Christians. So that's the first myth that I think is the fact that Israel is this white state or white supremacist state. That's the first piece of nonsense. The second piece of nonsense is that there's any kind of segregation, there's any kind of separation between the Jews and the non-Jews. If you actually go to Israel and you see for yourself, and I encourage anyone who makes those claims and repeats those propaganda talking points, literally go to Israel, and as you step off the plane, you will suddenly see, a whack of democracy that will actually hit you and take your breath away. And you'll suddenly see Jews and Arabs working together, walking together, on the beach together, in the buses together. You'll see Arabs at all levels of Israeli society, from doctors, dentists, the Supreme Court in Israel. You will see in the political sphere, if you go to the Knesset, Israel's parliament, you will see multiple political parties, all kinds of areas, all kinds of ideologies, speaking with freedom of speech, the only place probably in the entire Middle East where you can actually stand up and criticize your own leadership, and it's completely accepted because of the values of democracy. Then the idea of that there's sort of laws that segregate, that is complete nonsense. There is laws that protect anyone in Israel to be equal citizens. Hebrew and Arabic are official languages of Israel. If you go and look at the street signs, you will see, and it's quite remarkable in South Africa because we don't even get this here, you'll see street signs in Hebrew, in Arabic, in English, and you'll see this real protection of democracy. And I would say, Israel is such an incredible country in terms of its court system. It's continuously debating these things. It's continuously got checks and balances. So the simple answer is go see for yourself, and you will be absolutely shocked at what hits you.
Now, Rowan, I'm going to take off the BDS hat for a second. I was feeling rather sick even having it on, and agree with you. And I'll say this into the camera. Guys, if you don't believe Rowan, if you somehow think, of course Hike and Rowan would say this, they're both Zionists, I went to Israel and I brought you content from there. And everything that he's just detailed now, including content from Israelis themselves confirming this, I'll link right over here in a link, and you can watch some of those videos there. And I hope to go back to Israel to explore these issues further on. Rowan, I had to just quickly say that because, again, as you said when you ended your sentence, it's about seeing. If seeing is believing, I've got the content. People should have a look at that. But Rowan, as we head towards the peace deal, you've painted a picture of what Israel is and who Israel, or what Israel is to its citizens. And when I say citizens, I mean both Arabs and Hebrews, and Jews and the like. Then someone will come in and say, yeah, but and this BDS has is coming back now. Someone comes and says, yeah, but Rowan, of course you'd say this, and you and Big Daddy, of course, would be happy at the deal of the century because much like the lovely anti-Semitic cartoon we pushed out, you Jews are like the rats that are enjoying the Swiss cheese. And by the way, just as I take this BDS off, just even me saying this right now is making my blood boil, but I must stay in character.
The kosher cheese.
Don't forget
that.
Yes, you're right, Rowan. The kosher cheese, and much like Swiss cheese, the holes are for us Palestinians, or for the Palestinians, and the cheese bit, the kosher cheese bit, is for the Jew rats, as you saw in that picture. I'm getting angry. How do you explain that? Of course, you like the deal. It's nothing for the Arabs and the Israelis, and the Palestinians, and it's everything for the Jews. Explain that away, Rowan.
First of all, that cartoon just speaks to the anti-Semitic nature of the BDS movement.
Absolutely.
And obviously, any organization that is got this mask of anti-Zionism, you just watch him a little bit, and suddenly that anti-Semitic backface will suddenly you'll see it coming through. So
I'm actually really angry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's absolutely shocking. But
okay.
Eventually you'll see that the anti-Semitism comes out.
Yeah.
Let's move to the deal.
Mm-hmm.
This deal is actually a very interesting deal for multiple reasons. First of all, the importance is that it recognizes the rights of Jews to live in what they claim and what they know and what they believe to be their historical ancient homeland of Judea and Samaria. So it says that Jews have a right to live, the very bedrock of Jewish belief. When Abraham, basically, the entire story, there's a town called Hebron.
Yep.
And you can actually go and visit. You can go and visit the cave and tomb of the patriarchs, and you can see the matriarchs and the patriarchs of the Jewish people. And in fact, we call Jews because we come from a place called Judea. So we actually come from that place. So first of all, the deal recognizes that right, and also it recognizes the rights of Jews to have their eternal, undivided capital as Jerusalem, which we can go into a lot more detail if you wish. But it also recognizes that Jews have a right to live there, but it also accepts that the Palestinians live there as well, and they're not going anywhere.
Yes.
And this deal provides a framework where the Palestinians, based on certain conditions, based on them demilitarizing themselves, based on them renouncing terror and violence, based on them disarming the terrorist organization Hamas and Islamic Jihad, it says if you do that, and you actually accept Israel's right as a Jewish state and right to exist, the Palestinians have a path to their own state, and actually provides for statehood for the Palestinians. Plus, and even more importantly, it actually doubles the size of the Palestinian state. And it provides a contiguity between the West Bank and Gaza. And it actually creates two extra zones. Actually, if you look on the actual map, the proposed map, and this proposed map is actually a starting point. It's a framework of negotiation. It actually creates extra places for the Palestinians and incentivizes them, provides them with $50 billion of potential investment and support to actually thrive and grow and allow themselves to become, if they want, the Singapore of the Middle East, if they choose. So it actually recognizes that Jews have a right to the land, and it recognizes the potential for a Palestinian state based on these conditions. So it's very interesting.
The response to this deal, Rowan, has been significantly different to what we've seen historically in the past too, hasn't it? I'm talking now about the Arab nations around Israel. Now, let me quickly set it out for why I say this is important. Just 30, 40 years ago, Rowan, you literally had Arab nations around Israel gang up on it with the stated objective of annihilating the Jewish people, annihilating the state of Israel. That's no more than a generation, maybe two ago. Yet today, some of those nations, upon hearing of this deal and President Trump's diplomatic work in bringing some of these nations on board, are now literally saying, thumbs up. This is a good starting point for peace in that part of the world. Now, someone might come in, and I'll play the BDS guy again, and I want you to respond. The BDS guy comes in and says, yeah, but this deal's nothing different, and all these Arab nations are sellouts. They don't understand the importance of staying at war with Israel because this land belongs to the Palestinians. The deal is a bad deal. How will you respond to that?
Well, actually, this deal and the acceptance of the deal by many Arab states, many states, Gulf states, so we're looking at Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, you're looking at even the tacit support from Saudi Arabia, that's where there was support from Egypt, and obviously we can go into the other countries. It actually reflects, first of all, a groundswell of change and the change of mindset in the Middle East. There's actually this recognition that, in fact, first of all, Israel is not the problem, because this has been the propaganda that we've been hearing since 1948 and before. The Jews are, in fact, not the problem and not the cause, in fact, of instability in the Middle East. There's a recognition of that. Plus, there's a recognition that, in fact, there's a sort of fatigue with the Palestinian issue because the Palestinians, for so many centuries, so many decades, should I say, have rejected every single peace offer.
Exactly.
They've rejected every single offer for them to get a state. So there's fatigue. They're saying, come on, guys, this is yet another deal. In fact, this deal is really good for you. It reflects the status on the ground. It can actually uplift Palestinian society. So there's an acceptance that this deal can actually bring about change, but there's wariness with the Palestinian issue, and that is the difference.
And Red, I want to zoom in for a moment on this one, because this is this point I made on the show. I'll put a link to that somewhere on the screen. A conversation we had with Benji Schulman, also from SAZF. And I made this point too, and I said, for once, Rowan, you have a situation where there is a deal that actually prioritizes the peoples of both those countries. That is both Palestine, which might potentially, become a country, in Israel, and of course, the state of Israel, by actually saying, how about you do the winning and become prosperous and become middle class individuals who enjoy a high standard of living, as opposed to what you have now, where you're run by these organizations, these terrorist organizations like Hamas, the Islamic Jihad, and I'll even lump in Fatah in there. You have this illegitimate president who's serving his 16th year of a 4-year term, exactly. Which is absolutely nuts. That's like Ramaphosa staying for another 30 years and going, hey man, it's my first term. And actually says to these people, you know what, the power's in your hands. You get to decide what you want. The quagmire and the mess and the poverty that you sit in right now under the helm of these terrorist organizations, or like the Israelis, and really like most of the Arab world now, which has progressed and moved on, you can come into the 21st century and become middle class. How is that not just an absolute ideal starting place?
Exactly, and it's a recognition that, for so many decades, there's been belief that the Palestinians lack agency.
Yes.
It's almost, it's infantilizing the Palestinians, saying, well, you know what, the Palestinians don't really have agency, they don't really have control, everyone else must make decisions for them, and they can be the cry bullies to reject it and to become violent at the rejection of every offer. And now there's a sort of movement to say, you know what, the Palestinians are actually responsible for their future, the Palestinians actually do have agency. Here's the opportunity. Take it, grasp it. You can benefit, you can uplift your society, you can actually benefit from investment, you can actually benefit from relations with Israel. I mean, that's another very important point, that two countries that had a war, they were in a state of war with Israel, Egypt and Jordan, they eventually came to the realization that peace would actually be better and have better relations with the Middle East and with their own economic situation if they worked with Israel. And that if you actually look at the economic growth of those two countries after they signed their peace deals, that attest to it. Suddenly there's cooperation, suddenly there's collaboration. And the same, that is one of the tragedies of this whole conflict, is that the average Palestinian has missed out on the phenomenal opportunities of working with Israel and the phenomenal opportunities of building their tech sector, of growing the economy, of growing their agricultural sector, of becoming knowledge workers in their own right.
Exactly.
These are all the opportunities that are now available to the Palestinians.
Absolutely, and I'm nodding in vehement agreement, because I think of, just to slightly move us away from this topic, just for a moment, I think about our own country and how the influences of those pro-BDS types, both in the BDS as an organization and their influence in government, or rather in the ANC, is slowly, had been for a while, slowly pushing us away from being that exact sort of country that also benefits from Israeli technology, Israeli diplomacy in terms of the various initiatives that the Israeli embassy in our case runs. Let me go to the sort of semi-final area that I want us to look at, because guys, I will have Rowan on the show relatively regularly as I open up that Zionist stream of my show. Rowan, let's look at President Trump for a moment. He's come under a lot of criticism by the usual crowd. And here's the thing: I've got guys in my audience who love Trump, and I've got guys who are neutral, and I've got guys who absolutely hate Trump on that sort of TDS vibe. But on this particular issue of his foreign policy approach, tongue twister, to Israel, he's been spot on, hasn't he? From firstly moving the embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing the point you made earlier that has been the historical capital city of the Jewish people. And of course, and by the way, it's been long held US policy in any event.
Correct.
He just enacted it. And to this deal now, and I want to come back to the deal as we sort of wrap up on it. The optimist in me basically sits and says, you know what, for a change, you now have a situation where if there is maybe a suppressed leadership that we don't hear about in that Palestinian world, whether they are in Judea and Samaria or in Gaza, in the West Bank and in Gaza, it'll give that guy who's not in Hamas, who's not in Islamic Jihad, and who's not in the PA arrangement, it'll give that guy maybe an opportunity to rally some Palestinians and say, guys, this is it. This is our opportunity. Talk to me about that. Is there a possibility? And it's not, as Benji said, he doesn't think there'll be a Mandela that comes out. It's not even about a Mandela thing, but do you think this gives other organizations who are maybe organizing people on the ground in that part of the world an opportunity to be a voice in this debate?
Well, I'm truly hoping that is the case. As unfortunately, what often isn't depicted in the media is that Palestinian society is a very autocratic, totalitarian society.
Yes.
Freedom of speech is not recognized. Freedom of association is not recognized. And often anyone who comes up against the authority, both the PLO as well, the PLA should we say it, as well as the Palestinian Authority or Hamas in the Gaza, they often are, all kinds of things happen to them that we don't want to talk about. And that actually goes back to the difference between Israel and the Palestinian areas. However, there are voices, you might call them moderate voices. I'm not sure if they're moderate in our context, but actually are saying, you know what, we actually want a better society in the Palestinian world. It's actually time to work with Israel. In fact, a lot of Palestinians really work with Israel, work in Israel. You and I actually visited the SodaStream factory, and we saw how the incredible opportunities it brings them 3 times the salary that they would get living in the Palestinian areas.
I'll link that video over here.
It's really, really important to see that actually a lot of this collaboration, cooperation actually does happen on a person-to-person basis. And I think that there's tech centers that in sort of Ramallah and areas that actually link up with Israel, sort of bypass the government if possible in the Palestinian Authority. And you might see more of that happening, but unfortunately, ultimately, it's a mindset shift that has to happen across Palestinian society, and that goes from the very bottom to the very top to say, you know what, we reject, as you mentioned, the 16-year term of our so-called president. We actually believe in maybe more Western values of democracy. We're starting to reject this kind of suppressive, repressive lifestyle, and you might start seeing it happen, but obviously it needs to take time. There needs to be a mindset shift as well. Something that's also often not mentioned in the media is that, unfortunately, Palestinians, from the time that they're infants to obviously old people, they are continuously bombarded with anti-Semitic propaganda and incitement.
Pure indoctrination. I mean, I'll flight some videos to show you exactly what he's talking about. Young, cute kids being dressed up like terrorists and being told to kill Jews. It's crazy.
And also paid to kill Jews. And that's the big tragedy, is that the Palestinian Authority actually incentivizes its population to kill Jews. If you hurt a Jew, you get $400. If you kill a Jew, you get $3,500, and your whole family could actually be supported for life on that kind of pension. That's coming from European taxpayer money, by the way, and other places. So that whole mind shift has to change. There has to be acceptance that Israel is the Jewish state, that Jews have a right to exist, they have a right to be there, and just there has to be this modernization in Palestinian society. So maybe it will happen, please God, one day.
Amen. You and I both can only hope. Rowan, final two questions as we sort of wrap up our conversation. Let's talk about South Africans. Now, we've been having conversations off air around the need. And by the way, when I say need, I'm not saying it's not happening right now. I'm just of the view that we can do absolutely much more to have South Africans who actually have a very deep love and appreciation for Israel for religious reasons and various other reasons, to come to hear more stories about exactly the awesome stuff, the awesome work that happens in that part of the world. In fact, you live in Cape Town. Just a year or two before, Cape Town was on the cusp of day zero, no water, running out of water. Yet the Israelis had the same problem back in 2008, I think.
In fact, even further, there's obviously Israel is actually mainly desert.
2/3 Negev desert.
It's mainly desert. Not much rain.
Absolutely, and I mean they had a similar problem, and to this day, to an extent, in terms of the climate, still in the same situation. But technology has helped them almost completely bypass that and even start greening up large parts of Israel, to be honest. Talk to me, about the work of the South African Zionist Federation and why it's very important for you guys to be the advocates of Israel in South Africa, and of course the other organization, but really SA Zionist Federation.
Well, first of all, we believe that Jews living in South Africa have a right to be Jews, to be proud Jews, and to be proud Zionists. We have that unequivocal right, and no one will take that right away from us, to have this intrinsic connection to the Jewish state. Because in fact, Zionism is another side of the coin of Judaism, and we can go into that at some point if you want. We can talk about all the incredible ways that Judaism and Zionism are connected. So the Zionist Federation...
I'll have to park that one for the next chat here, but yeah.
I'm happy to chat about you on that. So we protect that right, and we advocate for Israel. We just basically tell the truth. We basically show people what is going on. We advocate for South Africans and for the South African government and the South African civil society to open up their arms and work with Israel. You know, South Africa is actually 80% of South Africans are actually Christian. And if you go to the average South African, you'll see actually a love for Israel. It's actually a love for Israel. In Genesis, if anyone's religious, they'll know Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. It says, I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And we are saying to the South African government, to the South African people, we want this country to be blessed. Absolutely. We want this country to grow. And it's no coincidence that countries that take a position against Israel and groups and people throughout history, as you might know, have not lasted, not done very well.
They do pretty crappy.
But those people who open up to Israel, open up to the Jewish people, they prosper and they grow. And we want to bring that message to this country, and we want to say Israel has a right to be here. Jews, we have a right to connect. Non-Jewish South Africans, Christian, anyone who wants to practice anything, they have a right to connect, and we have a right to be proud of our heritage and who we are.
Absolutely. Rowan, I must end it over here. But before I do, because as I said, we really will have you and other colleagues from the Federation onto the show. Maybe as a final question, talk to me about some of the projects that you guys may be working on at the moment, stuff that you have maybe in the distance from the Zionist Fed, and if there's anybody maybe who's interested in either supporting you guys in whatever way, how do they do that?
Sure. Well, first of all, we have a website. You can easily find us on our website. You can just search for Google for the Zionist Federation. We do incredible work. We a small team with incredible people, and our output is exceptional. We work with Israeli education. We speak to business people in this country. We connect them to Israeli technology. We try to do a lot of work in water, even though, as you mentioned, the government and others are, not too happy with working with the one country that has solved the water crisis. I would invite the South African government to open their doors to that.
Absolutely.
And all kinds of projects we do, facilitating people between South Africa and Israel. A lot of the stuff in sort of supporting Israel politically, growing the community, the Jewish community, growing our support across the country. We do phenomenal work. And if you go to our website or you want to speak to any of us, you're more than welcome.
Perfect. Rowan, thank you very much. And as I always do at the end of the show, how do the people find you on social media?
You can just go to Twitter and you can look for Row Polo. That's my handle.
Perfect. There we go. Brian, thank you very much, homie.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thanks.
And thank you for watching this episode. Again, me opening up a side of me which I perhaps don't talk about a lot, but you've been hearing a lot about ever increasingly on the show. The idea of, how do you foster better relations between a country that's gone through the absolute most horrendous things, if you will, in history, but they've always overcome, both as a Jewish nation and the state of Israel itself. And I think there's many lessons in that for us here in South Africa. And you, dear listener, dear viewer, have to be at the forefront of telling your local politician enough with the anti-Semitism, enough with the support of terrorist organizations in the name of South Africans, not in our name, and definitely not in the name of this show. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Remember, you can support your favorite fat boy by becoming a friend of the IRR. This is our crowdfunding campaign. It's exactly the funds from you that allow me to get around the country and bring you content. And how do you do that, you're wondering? Well, SMS your name to 32823, or you can find us online if you're tech savvy like the Israelis. See what I did there? By going to irr.org.za, I'm right, /join. And you can donate 90 Rand per month towards the work that your favorite fat boy does. Guys, thank you so much for watching. And remember, as always, as I always say, never trust a commie.